All right, in an exclusive CNN interview, U.S. President Joe Biden says he'll stop sending some American weapons to Israel if it pushes ahead with a large-scale invasion of Rafah. The president is worried about more civilian deaths as a result of large bombs dropped on population centers. Time now for the exchange and a closer look at the U.S. reaction to the ongoing war in Gaza. Let's bring in Senator Chris Coons, joining us live now from the U.S. Capitol. Obviously, the Israelis are not happy about this idea that the U.S. is going to be halting some military assistance if Israel goes into Rafah. How is the administration at this point still assuring Israel that it's not walking away from its security?
Well, Zain, yesterday in a hearing of the Senate Appropriations Committee dealing with defense, Secretary of Defense Austin was asked this question directly by several senators, and he repeated what has been President Biden's position as well, that our commitment to Israel's security and defense is ironclad. President Biden has recently signed into law, and the DoD has delivered significant amounts of defensive weaponry, the Iron Dome system, for example, billions of dollars in support. And just a few weeks ago, when Iran launched 300 missiles and drones at Israel, the United States organized a joint defensive effort by Saudi Arabia, by Jordan, by the United Kingdom, France, and the United States to ensure that along with Israel, all of those missiles and drones were shot down before they caused any significant harm. So I think it is clear that what President Biden's position is that, of course, Israel has not just the right but the obligation to go after Hamas after the horrific attacks of October 7th, and we will support them in doing so. But in Rafah, before they go in at scale, where there are 1 million civilian refugees who've moved to Rafah from the rest of Gaza at the direction of the IDF, they have to provide for them to leave Rafah and then go ahead to carry out the last stages of this campaign against Hamas.
But in terms of using American military assistance to sort of get Israel to behave in a particular way, is that going to work? At this point, the threat by the Biden administration hasn't really altered Israel's plans in any way, shape, or form.
This will have significant negative consequences for Israel globally, not just in the immediate region or in the relations with the United States. If they were to go into Rafah, there's no way to carry out a campaign to kill another 10,000 Hamas fighters without killing another 20,000 or more innocent civilians, women and children. So I've had this discussion directly with Bibi Netanyahu, with the defense minister, Yoav Gallant, on my last visit to Israel, and they said they understood that, of course, they intend to allow for civilians to relocate out of the way of the last stages of their campaign against Hamas. I think it's important that they do so, that they respect international law around civilian protection. But I also think it's important that they continue their campaign against Hamas. My hope, of course, Zain, is that there will be a deal to allow for the release of hostages now held well over 200 days by Hamas, and for a ceasefire. But in the absence of that, Israel has the right and obligation to continue their campaign against Hamas as long as they provide for civilians to relocate out of the way of that campaign, and as long as they continue to facilitate humanitarian assistance getting into Gaza.
All right, just to pivot slightly, because Kenyan President William Ruto set for a presidential visit in the United States. The focus is going to be on trade and investment, but you cannot ignore what is happening in his home country, in Kenya, just in terms of the massive flooding. You've got East Africa oscillating between drought, severe drought, by the way, and severe flooding that has taken so many lives. Just explain to us how the U.S. is assisting with that, because obviously that is going to be a topic of conversation between both presidents.
The United States and Kenya have a long and close and deep relationship. I am thrilled President William Ruto is coming 2 weeks from now for a state visit, for a state dinner. He will be visiting Atlanta as well for several days, and he will be visiting with a wide range of different companies and communities and organizations while here in the United States. But as you say, Zain, Kenya has genuinely suffered through drought, through locusts, through massive flooding. And the United States, through USAID, is providing assistance, both emergency response and development assistance, as we strengthen and deepen this important partnership that anchors U.S. relations in East Africa.
I know that you have championed and co-authored a bill that is hugely important to you. It just passed in the Senate, this idea of stop taxing American hostages, something that I didn't know, that if you are American and you are held hostage in another country, that you are actually hit with IRS penalties. This is something that you have worked for quite a long time to try to overcome and change. Take us through that, Senator.
So the journalist Jason Rezaian, who was a Washington Post reporter, who was taken captive by the Iranian regime and imprisoned in Iran for a year and a half, when he came home, the first thing he got from the American government was a letter from the IRS saying, you owe us penalties, fees, and fines for failure to pay taxes. When he went to meet with the IRS, he said, here's a front page story from the Washington Post. I was in prison unjustly. The same thing would happen to Evan Gershkovich, the Wall Street Journal reporter, if we were to secure his release from a Russian prison where he's currently unjustly detained. This bill that I co-sponsor with Republican Senator Mike Rounds will end that practice, and if someone is wrongfully detained or imprisoned overseas, it will allow the IRS to forgive any tax-related penalties, fines, or fees.
All right, Senator Chris Coons, live for us there. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Zain.